So what is the single best survivor queue build, survivor queue, solo queue survivor build out there? What is number one? The answer might surprise you. In my opinion, these are the 4 perks that you should be bringing in order to ensure your survival at high ranks and get out alive. That's a little redundant, but there's a lot of emphasis here on your survival. Not anybody else's, your survival. And there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that this is for solo queue specifically. And some of these perks you might not be surprised by. At least one of them I think you are going to be surprised by. And we're going to break down all 4 of them and why they're in the slot that they're in and why I think that they are part of the essential solo queue build. So the first one is definitely the one on this list that nobody should be surprised by. The first one is Dead Hard. Now, this is the best perk of the game. All right, bar none. There was a while there where I thought that Sprint Burst was the best perk in the game. We recently just got Overcome, and I thought that potentially that was going to be a challenger for the top spot. But Dead Hard is number one. Dead Hard just gives you such an insane amount of utility when it matters. Now, I think the debate over which perk is better for an exhaustion perk between Dead Hard and Sprint Burst is actually closer than you think. Most people would say Dead Hard is far and away the best. I think it's very, very close. But the reason that I give Dead Hard the edge is because I think Dead Hard is better for the type of player who is really good at looping. Sprint Burst on paper seems like the better perk overall, but it sucks to have to try to preserve it at all times, because if you sprint, you waste it. And that means a lot of wasted time over the course of a match if you're walking around trying not to burn it. And Dead Hard is just better because if you're looping and you're a good looper, the sketchiest time to be looping is when you're injured, because if you're playing against a killer who's good and you go on a certain tile that's not particularly safe, like a T-wall, L-wall, where a killer can really mind game you into a hit, Dead Hard essentially allows you to make riskier plays because you have a get out of jail free card at any given moment. So if you're playing against a killer who moonwalks, who hides their stain, who does all these different things that could potentially fool you, you can make riskier plays where you're predicting what they're going to do. And if you guess wrong, you have a perk that lets you just dodge a hit, or in most instances, the most efficient way to use it is if, say, you take an angle to where you're just barely not going to make that window before they get a really long lunge hit on you. Dead Hard's going to give you just enough distance to make that window and prolong the chase. And I've seen for myself many, many times throughout my time playing Dead by Daylight instances where I made the window with Dead Hard and I wound up looping them for another minute. Like, it's just like, if I didn't have Dead Hard, it would have changed the whole match. Like, they probably would have gotten a 4K. And one moment, one use of Dead Hard probably made the difference between the killer getting a 4K and the killer giving up a 4-person escape. And that's pretty outrageous value. So Dead Hard to me is undisputed the best perk in the game. And, you know, yeah, it's closer to Sprint Burst than I think most people give it credit for, but it's still the best perk in the game. So number 2, which is interesting, is Decisive Strike. Now, Decisive Strike is a perk that I wasn't high on for a long time because it's one of those perks that seems to never get value when you have it on, and then you wish you had it when you take it off. You know what I mean? It's one of those perks that is always like that, it seems like. But it's so important, especially in solo queue, because in solo queue, you don't have any way to communicate with your teammates. So I can't communicate to somebody like, you know, hey, the killer's camping me, or what. I can't communicate to somebody what the killer is doing unless we have some sort of form of aura reading that will show them where the killer is. So because I can't communicate to them, it's difficult to decide like how we're going to deal with camping and also hooks and hook states. So like if somebody runs up to me and they're seeing the killers camping, having a perk that's like, hey man, if I farm you off this hook, you just got to hit DS and you're out, is massive. That's huge for the entire course of the game. And if you think like 4 people in the lobby and all 4 of them are running Decisive Strike, that basically makes it so if the killer camps every single person that they hook, they're going to get punished hard. And it really, I think, makes it so you don't even really need to bring borrowed time. Decisive Strike is enough, and I think it has a lot of utility. And I also think on the topic of borrowed time, and that was spoilers on the last 2 perks, borrowed time's not in here. Borrowed time is not in the top 4. And one of the big reasons for that is that it really doesn't do anything to help you survive. Now, there's something to be said for rescuing a teammate from being camped to death, and keeping them in the match will help the overall momentum of everybody in the game. But I think Decisive Strike can do that just as well. And borrowed time is at a point now where most killers play around it in anticipation of it existing. So because of that, you don't even need to really bring it anymore because killers just assume you have it. So if you dive bomb the hook, 99% of the time, the killer's just going to leave the person you hooked alone because they're going to assume it's wasted effort because you've got borrowed time. They're going to assume that pretty much every time. So because of that, it's a very interesting effect that you really don't need to bring borrowed time because you basically get the benefit of borrowed time without having it equipped because of the way killers will play most of the time. And in instances where the killer does want to tunnel somebody off the hook, Decisive Strike will take care of that for you. So I think Decisive Strike is huge, and I think it's one of the perks you definitely got to bring in solo queue. Borrowed time is probably better in Survive with Friends, where you can really communicate and have like one person bring it and be like, hey man, you need to go get that save because you've got BT. If you're in solo queue, you don't know what everybody else is running. Decisive Strike is a good way to ensure your survival above all else. So then the third perk is Unbreakable. Unbreakable, like Decisive Strike, is one of those weird perks that's in a position where it's like, you know, it's one of those perks where you don't seem to get a lot of value out of it when you have it, and you wish you had it when you don't. But I think Unbreakable is a perk that is necessary for solo queue and especially good in combination with Decisive Strike. Because you could get caught in a situation where you get unhooked, killer tunnels you, knocks you down, and now they're going to leave you there because they're thinking he's got Decisive Strike. So they're waiting out Unbreakable. Unbreakable gives you so much like utility, because now you can like 99 yourself, which will make it easier for other people to get you up off the ground. Or you can 99 yourself and wait till a teammate shows up. And if they could drag the killer away for just a half second or take a hit, pop yourself up and get out. So Unbreakable is really good in that sense. And then it's really good in the occasional match where you run into a killer who slugs. There's so many times in a game where I'm playing solo queue that we can't communicate to one another. And the killer has, you know, say the last 3 people left. He's down 2 of them and he's chasing the 3rd. And now all of a sudden I get up with Unbreakable and it saves the whole match. And because you can't communicate with one another and be like, hey, one of us has Unbreakable or whatever, it's nice to have a perk that just works and could save the game for everybody without having access to voice comms. So Unbreakable and Decisive Strike are kind of a wombo combo that I think go really well together in solo queue and are must-haves. And the 4th perk is probably the most surprising one. This is the one that a lot of people wouldn't really expect. Kindred. Now, Kindred, there's a lot of other things that could have been in this slot. There's a lot of really good perks out there. There's Circle of Healing. Circle of Healing is excellent and is probably the biggest omission. That I'd say Circle of Healing and Borrowed Time are probably the two big ones that most people are like, why are those not in there? I already explained why Borrowed Time is not in there. Circle of Healing is massive, but Circle of Healing is interesting because you really only need one person to bring it and you get maximum benefit from it. So for me, because Circle of Healing is so popular, you don't really need to bring it because somebody else is probably already going to bring it. So why waste a perk slot on it? Use it for something else and just trust that somebody else is probably going to be bringing this in the lobby. And if they don't, they don't. You still have 4 really, really good perks. But if they do bring it, now you essentially have 5 perks. And your 5th one, Circle of Healing, is one of the best perks in the game. So that's really ridiculous. So that's the main reason why you shouldn't bring Circle of Healing in solo queue, in my opinion. It's because of its popularity, ironically enough. And Kindred, I think, is essential for solo queue because it offers so much information. And more importantly, like I've already said a million times, it really helps ensure your survival. So if you get hooked, you're now giving all this information of where everybody is to all your teammates, and that ensures that somebody's going to rescue you, and you'll pretty much never be left on hook to die. Because the more often than not, when that happens, it's because there's some kind of confusion among your teammates. Somebody's being chased, and then the other 2 who aren't doing anything or working on a gen just assume, oh, somebody else will take care of it. And then nobody takes care of it. And next thing you know, you're on stage 2 hook. This makes sure that that doesn't happen. They can all see each other and see what's going on, and it makes your team better. And then, maybe even more, well, not more importantly, but almost as important, is that it allows you to see what's going on. So then that way, if it's one of those situations where you're on a gen, other guy's being hooked, and your 3rd is on a gen, and nobody's going to save this guy, you now know I'm the one who has to go take care of this to save them a hook state. Because saving hook states is massive in this game. It's huge for the momentum of the survivor team. So this perk is huge in solo queue, and it's kind of interesting because it's really worthless when you're in Survive with Friends, because this provides the same information that voice comms could provide. In fact, it probably provides less information than you could provide by just using voice comms. But it is essential in solo queue if you're trying to sweat, if you're trying to, you know, just have fun, use whatever you want. But this is the 4 best survivor perks for solo queue, in my opinion. And then also, the fact that it reveals the killer's location within 16 meters of the hook is huge. Because then, if you do get camped, it lets every survivor in the match know, don't waste your time trying to get this unhook. Just do gens. And that's massive, because the most irritating thing in this game is when a killer camps, and then your teammates all bomb the hook and go down one by one, and then all they really did was feed the killer even more kills and more momentum and more pressure. So this is a great way to really punish killers who camp. And then, in the end, in an ideal scenario, if you're bringing everything that I have here, the God tier scenario would be, say you're the first person caught, you get hooked, everybody else is working on gens, your Kindred goes off and lets them know, hey, you're all working on gens, killer's camping me. They pop all those gens, they keep working on gens, they pop every gen, they get all 5 done. You're close to dead at this point. And now they come in, unhook you for a desperation save. You've got dead hard to hopefully dead hard out of there without getting hit. If you do get hit, you've got Decisive Strike as a backup. And then if the killer decides to, you know, stare at your body and let you bleed out because they don't want to get hit with DS, you've got Unbreakable. So it all like really combos with each other and has a lot of synergy. And I think this is by far the best solo queue build that you can bring. And yeah, there are other better perks out there that you can use and survive with friends. But if you're playing strictly solo queue and all you want to do is survive and you're not really interested in playing goofy fun builds and you just want to sweat and rank up, this is the build to run. So let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if you agree, if there's any perks that you think are omissions outside of Boon Circle of Healing or Borrowed Time, or if you think that those 2 belong in there, let me know why. Or if there's something else out there that I didn't even mention that you think belongs in the top 4, let me know in the comments. But anyway, this is the top 4 survivor perks for solo queue. Thanks for watching.